Welcome back to 1% Weekly, the program that helps you manage your business, grow your investment portfolio, and reduce your tax bill. In this week's episode, I want to talk about trouble at mill at the IOD in Pall Mall. I want to talk about how Deutsche Bank is looking after its own before it looks after its customers. And I want to talk about some new little rules around Russians and their wealth in this country called unexplained wealth orders. In the UK, we're quite well served for organisations representing business. We've got the Chambers of Commerce, we've got the Federation of Small Business, we've got the CBI, and of course we've got that grand old dame of the business world, the Institute of Directors. But as you may have noticed, there's been a bit of trouble recently with a lot of kind of strife in amongst the senior people, rumours about secretly taped conversations, and then the chair having to kind of resign amid all sorts of allegations from those secretly recorded meetings. It's an organisation that's been in trouble for a while. Its membership has been declining since the 1990s. And at the heart of it, according to those who are close to the IOD, is really a struggle to understand why it exists. Is it primarily a training organisation? Is it there to champion business in a sense of political lobbying and so on? What's its raison d'etre? And this is the sort of thing that I think is a really valid question that any business owner should ask themselves from time to time, because over the years you can drift away from your core mission and you forget why you actually set the business up in the first place. Now here they've gone so far off piste that even the members don't really know what it's all about anymore. And really they need a change of not just leadership, but a change of mission and a change of direction. And I happen to agree with one of the people who's apparently in line to take over the role, and that's Luke Johnson, this well-known serial entrepreneur. And he's saying that it's kind of stuck in the past, and what it needs to be doing now is explaining the importance of business to the community. Because we seem to have a whole generation now that doesn't understand that. And one of the things you've heard me talk about with the rise in popularity of Jeremy Corbyn is how much the millennials seem to buy into his ideas about the state owning everything, the state nationalising everything, the state doing everything, and how this will all be wonderful and utopian and we'll all live happily ever after. Well, it's never worked throughout all of history. You know, Cuba, perhaps one of the most recent examples, but go back through all the examples of communism and you know, really full-on state socialism, it's never worked. What has worked best of all, it's not perfect, but what's worked best of all in the most regions, in the most countries for the longest time, is good old capitalism. But who's championing it now? We have a sort of blue Labour Tory government that really doesn't come out with these kind of messages at all. And then we have a hard left Labour opposition. No one's out there in the public domain reiterating why business matters. You heard me earlier on in this series talking about how a few small businesses can transform jobs growth. We need people to understand that. We need people to see that business is the wealth creator. And you can't distribute wealth around society until you've created it. And, you know, tax and government doesn't create wealth, it only ever destroys wealth. So really what we need from the IOD is visionary leadership about explaining to the British people the importance of business and entrepreneurship to the community. And I very much hope that whoever the new chairman or chairwoman is, can't even say words like that, is that gender PC? Let's say whoever the new chair of IOD is actually has the right vision, the right personality, and the right media savvy skills to get out there and get this message out to the British population that business matters and everything we enjoy today is based on capitalism, not on communism, Marxism, or socialism. That's what we need to focus on if we want to have continued improving living standards in this country. Over the last 10 years, we've all come to love the big banks because of the way they behaved during the financial crisis and afterwards. Ask Noel Edmonds about that one, by the way. But I think this week, Deutsche Bank really take the biscuit for announcing at the same time both a 735 million euro loss, which is 48% worse than they thought they were going to have, and a 2.2 billion euro bonus pool for their staff, which, by the way, happens to be almost exactly 10 times the 200 million they've allocated as dividends to shareholders. So let me get this straight. We run a business, we own the business as shareholders, we appoint a management team who run it, and they hire all these staff who are apparently brilliant people. They then run the business, lose 735 million euros because they're so brilliant, and then we pay them 3 times that much in bonuses as a thank you for losing the 735 million. Meanwhile, the owners who've actually bought the company, the shareholders, we're going to pay them a tenth of that, about 200 million, which of course I suppose will at least prevent the losses getting any worse. But you've got to say, okay, John Cryan, the CEO, has decided not to take his bonus this year. And, but overall, the senior executives' packages are actually up about 8% as well. So what a great way to run a business. I'm going to have a real argument with our accountants now because they didn't tell me that I could do this, that I could make a massive loss and then award myself a mega bonus and everyone would be happy. I don't quite get it. So if you're a shareholder in Deutsche Bank, you might like to have a little word with Mr. Cryan. If you're working there, congratulations. I've heard one person say that they're paying first-class bonuses for second-class staff, so I hope you enjoy your work. But I just think this is symptomatic of kind of everything that's wrong with the banks. If ever a sector deserves to be disrupted, whether it's by cryptocurrencies or new challenger banks or whatever, these old aging dinosaurs, and Deutsche was one of the worst. If you studied the aftermath of the financial crisis, it's been a dead man walking. They had trillions tied up in derivatives that went pear-shaped after 2008, and they've been gradually clawing their way back since. Now, this announcement of these results was peppered with all kinds of positives about the future, and it's all going to be lovely in the next few years. And banks, can go from famine to feast quite quickly. They're actually quite volatile businesses, despite the image they try to give of being long-term, well-established, solid companies. And that goes all the way back to the fancy branches they build over the years. You see bank branches always look so impressive. The reality is banks are very fragile businesses. And Deutsche came that close to going under. And now, on its way to this fragile recovery, you look at numbers like this and you think, are you taking the you-know-what? I mean, really, seriously, to pay 2.2 billion in bonuses on the same day you announce a 735 million euro loss? I mean, bang! Did you enjoy the recent Russian TV series McMafia? I certainly did. Well, it turns out it might be just a little bit closer to reality than you might think, because we've now introduced things called unexplained wealth orders, which are basically designed to look at these Russian oligarchs who are living in the lap of luxury in London and see where the money came from to fund their lifestyle, if there's the slightest kind of suspicion about it. And it's actually as low as assets above £50,000 that they have the right to investigate. So they're going to look at somebody who perhaps seems to be an MP in some part of the European Union where he's earning 50,000 a year and he's just suddenly arrives in a 5 million house in Knightsbridge, and they're going to say, hold on a minute, how does that work then? The government's talking tough on this. Now, this all predates the Skripal case, by the way, so I can imagine it's even going to be more intense now that we see Russia as kind of public enemy #1. But there's a lot of these guys who, if they're not in fear of their lives from their friends back in Russia, are certainly now going to be in fear of HMRC and the police who are going to come and get them. And there's some real tough talk. So Ben Wallace, the security minister, said, unexplained wealth orders can be used against everyone from a local drug trafficker to an international oligarch or overseas criminal. And we will go after these iconic individuals because we know that there are links between this dirty money that's coming into the country and the Russian state. And they reckon that £90 billion of dirty Russian money is laundered through London each and every year. Now, if you're an investor with us, you'll know what a pain the anti-money laundering requirements have become. They want everything from your passport to your inside leg measurement, in triplicate, and all the rest of it. Allegedly, it's because there's more and more of this dirty money coming through the UK. So you have to prove that you are who you say you are, prove that you live where you say you live, and now, to make investments, you even have to show proof of funds. I'll give you an example of how bizarre this can be. I recently had to extend a lease on a property that I own, and the amount I needed to pay was something like £15,800, and there was only £15,000 in the property account that was relevant to that property. So I naively transferred £800 from another account and then said, I'm ready to pay it. And they said, oh no, I'm sorry, that's not how it works. You've used this other account now, so as well as the 3 months of the account with the 15,000 in it, we now want 3 months of the account that the £800 came from before we'll say that this money is clean. Now that's the extent of what they're doing with a British investor who's banked with them for 40 years or whatever. So you can imagine what it's going to be like now for these Russian guys. So if you know any Russian oligarchs and you're not quite sure where their money came from and you want to grass them up to the HMRC, this would be a great way of doing it. So unexplained wealth orders are the latest Big Brother measure being used against those nasty Russians. One little thing I might just warn you about. Things that start out being used against nasty Russians have a nasty habit of being turned on other people more locally and perhaps people you might think of as more innocent. So before we laugh too much about the outcome for these guys, just remember that you could end up being the victim of an unexplained wealth order yourself. So maybe just keep the Ferrari in the garage when the taxman's in the vicinity, because you don't want one of these coming after you just like the Russians. Well, that's it for another episode of 1% Weekly. I hope you found some useful information in there for your own financial planning. Now, just before we go, I need to tell you that obviously I know how obsessed you are with social media. I know how big a thing it's become, that you're never off Facebook or Twitter or whatever. You'll be pleased to know that something as trivial as death no longer needs to separate you from the social media activity that you so love. Because now an organization has come up that's going to give you the chance to appoint a post-death executor to curate your social media accounts. I mean, why should they die just because you've shuttled off your mortal coil and left your body behind? So you'll be able to continue annoying your friends with endless messages on Facebook even after you're dead. I'll see you next time.